Well, thank you to Senator Johnson and Peters for holding this important hearing, and I want to thank the witnesses, of course, for being here today to talk about this incredibly important and extremely challenging issue. And so the recent rise of extremism and domestic terrorism we know is a serious threat we've seen far too often across our nation, from El Paso to Pittsburgh. We said it from our houses of worship to our schools, and it requires a concerted effort on the part of Congress and our state and local partners. As I said in last week's Commerce Committee hearing on online extremism, however, we cannot ignore the fact that the absence of sensible, common sense gun safety measures like background checks is allowing hate-filled individuals who wish to commit acts of terror to access dangerous weapons far too easily. I hope that alongside this important push for gun violence prevention, today's hearing on this rapidly evolving homeland security threat helps us better tackle this nation's ongoing challenge with white supremacy, anti-Semitism, and other hate-filled domestic terrorism. But I'd like to turn to UASI reform for a moment. As we approach the two-year anniversary of the 1 October shooting in Las Vegas, I represent Nevada. I live in Henderson, just not very far from where the shooting was, as a matter of fact, the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history. We in Nevada are not only reminded of the pain our community felt, but how the threat posed by mass violence is present now, and we hope not, but possibly in the future. So despite this, and despite the fact that Las Vegas had more visitors than any other year last year in history, the Department of Homeland Security's principal program for funding urban security, the UASI grant, does not take into account the unique challenges faced by a city like Las Vegas. The UASI funding formula, I want to explain this. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, we have a beautiful Las Vegas Strip, great downtown area. It treats those 30 major hotels, casinos on the Las Vegas Strip as one entity. Our airport, of course, right next to where the shooter was on 1 October. Another piece of critical infrastructure. We have a vast convention meeting space, all of them soft targets. Although we only have about 3 million people in in Nevada, about 2 million in Las Vegas, nearly 50 million people come there each year. So between the Strip and downtown Las Vegas, over 100,000 hotel rooms, critical infrastructure. We have Hoover Dam, Nellis Air Force Base, just a few miles off the Las Vegas Strip. Major data storage centers, our Nevada Test and Training Range, and our Nevada National Security Site. So, in statute, UASI does not consider this. So what I want to ask you is this, and whoever would like to take it, please feel free. How should we reevaluate what constitutes a possible domestic terrorist target, and how should we rethink our definition of critical infrastructure as the terrorism threat evolves? And do we consider in Nevada that Nellis Air Force Base, the training range, the nuclear test site, Hoover Dam, and 50 million visitors are all within a small space? How do we add that to the formula? Please.
Senator, if I may, I'd like to maybe attempt to start to answer your question. Thank you for outlining a number of those key issues. I am very familiar with the UASI formula. And I want to make two important points before I get to that you accurately touched on in your statement as well. Two data points to share with you: that over the past 10 years, firearms were used in 73% of domestic extremist-related killings in the United States. Mm-hmm. So in a major metro area like Las Vegas or other parts of Nevada, the preferred weapon of choice to commit an attack is, in fact, without question, a firearm. And you also mentioned in your opening remarks, addressing the hate and bias and anti-Semitism and bigotry that is often the underlying issue that drives many of these attacks. It's so important for there to be increased training, resources and engagement with state, local, and community-based partners to help address what is often the precursor to much larger incidents. One of the things that we've looked at very closely and that ADL is supporting is a current piece of legislation known as the No Hate Act. I think this does provide a significant increase in resources to state, local, and community-based organizations to incentivize the reporting and training and engagement on hate and bias-motivated incidents. I think as we start to think through making better risk-based decisions for resources, having better data to drive that information is a key starting point. So I'd offer that as something for you to consider.
So we need risk predictive analytics, would you say?
Yes, Senator.
Please, Mr. Rosen.
Senator, so when we're doing a risk-based assessment, right, we would usually do two types of assessment. One would be a vulnerability assessment, which Las Vegas could be applied, pretty consistently across a wide range, and that's where you're looking at the potential targets. But that would be matched with a threat assessment. We didn't do this very well 10 years ago. So oftentimes, I'd be on a Joint Terrorism Task Force training team. Bill and I worked together on this. We would go out to, I'll give you an example, Louisville, Kentucky, to talk to them about al-Qaeda. And they would be like, we have no interest in this, right? But we have other interests and other threats we're interested in. So along with just allocation in terms of resources, I think it is making a menu or options for how you allocate UASI funding for different things that are needed by those locations. It isn't just an even map. The vulnerability assessment of Las Vegas is going to be wildly different from New York City, just in terms of how it lays out as a city.
Would you think that categorizing the Las Vegas Strip as one entity doesn't seem correct on its face?
No. I mean, my vulnerability assessments would be based on the type of venues, types of structures, transportation nodes are extremely important. But then on the threat assessment, too, it would be wildly different for Las Vegas than it would be possibly for New York City or Charlotte, North Carolina, or any of these locations. So rather than making a very cookie cutter, everybody gets the following, I would like to see UASI allocation on both the vulnerability and threat assessment side be allocated in a way that makes sense for local jurisdictions. And I think that's bringing in state and local partners. We have fusion centers now, which
we sure do.
really
Great one.
with tons of them, right, which understand these threats at a local level better. New Jersey State Police and the Office of Homeland Security there I've worked with for about a decade, and they've done a pretty good job of twisting that, but their UASI funding is coming out of New York City predominantly, right? Like that's how they're doing it. And so there's constant battles about what to allocate on, and oftentimes it's the federal government pushing down, this is what you need to focus on, and state and local saying, but this is what my problem is. So I would like to see better, risk integration from state, local, up to the federal level.
I look forward to working on that. Our Fusion Center brings together about 27 groups, and that was the reason the October 1 tragedy wasn't worse than it was. And so I look forward to working with you on reevaluating formulas in the future. Thank you.